Chapter 6 Arunachala. There is a ruggedness about the scene. Boulders lie as though scattered by a giant hand. Dry thorn and cactus fences, sun-parched fields, small hills eroded into gaunt shapes. And yet huge shady trees along the dusty road, and here and there, near tank or well, the vivid green of paddy fields. And rising up out of this rough beauty, the hill of Arunachala. Though only 2,682 feet high, it dominates the countryside. From the south, the site of the ashram, it is deceptively simple. Just a symmetrical hill with two almost equal foothills, one on either side. To make the symmetry more perfect, it wears most mornings a crown of white cloud or haze about the summit. But it is astonishing how the aspect changes as one treads the 8-mile road around it, Pradakshina, going the prescribed way from south to west with one's right side to the hill. And each aspect has its character and symbolism, that where it flings back an echo, that where the peak barely shows between two foothills, like the self in the interval between two thoughts, that of the 5 peaks, that of Shiva and Shakti, and others. Sacred tanks mark the 8 directions of space, and mantapams, simple stone halls, stand at various significant points. Preeminent among these is the Dakshinamurti Mantapam at the southern point, for Dakshinamurti is Shiva, teaching in silence, and that is Arunachala. As Bhagavan has said, "Who is the seer? When I sought within, I watched the disappearance of the seer and what survived it. No thought of I saw arose, so how could the thought I did not see arise? Who has the power to convey this in words, when even thou couldst do so in ancient days by silence only, appearing as Dakshinamurti? Only to convey by silence thy state, thou standest as a hill shining from heaven to earth." Sri Bhagavan always encouraged Pradakshina, the 8-mile circuit or circumambulation of the hill. Even in the case of the old or infirm, he would not discourage it, but only tell them to go slowly. Indeed, the Pradakshina is supposed to be made slowly, like a pregnant queen in her 9th month. Whether in silent meditation, or with singing or blowing of conch, it is to be made on foot, not in any conveyance, and in fact barefoot. The most auspicious times are the Shivaratri, the night of Shiva, and the Kartikai, the day when the constellation of Kartikai, the Pleiades, is in conjunction with the full moon, which falls usually in November, but sometimes December. On these occasions, the continuous stream of devotees has been compared to a garland round the hill. An elderly cripple was once hobbling on crutches along the road that skirts the hill. He had often done so in Pradakshina, but this time it was to leave Tiruvannamalai. He felt himself an encumbrance to his family. Quarrels had broken out, and he had decided to leave them and somehow make a living in a village. Suddenly, a young Brahmin appeared before him and snatched away his crutches, saying, "You don't deserve them." Before the anger that flushed him could find words, he realized that his limbs were straight and he needed no crutches. He did not leave Tiruvannamalai. He stayed and was well known there. Sri Bhagavan told the story in all detail to some devotees and remarked on its similarity to that told in the Arunachala Purana. He was a young Swami on the hill at the time, but he never said that it was he who appeared as the Brahmin youth. Arunachala is one of the oldest and most sacred of all of India's holy places. Sri Bhagavan declared that it is the heart of the earth, the spiritual center of the world. Sri Shankara spoke of it as Mount Meru. And in the Skanda Purana it declares, "That is the holy place. Of all, Arunachala is the most sacred. It is the heart of the world. Know it to be the secret and sacred heart center of Shiva." Many saints have lived there, merging their sanctity with that of the hill. It is said and confirmed by Sri Bhagavan that to this day the Siddhis, the sages with supernatural powers, dwell in its caves, whether with physical bodies or not, and some are said to have seen them as lights moving about the hill at night. There is a Puranic story about the origin of the hill. Once Vishnu and Brahma fell into disputing which of them was the greater. Their quarreling brought chaos on earth, so the Devas approached Shiva and besought him to settle the dispute. Shiva thereupon manifested himself as a column of light from which a voice issued declaring that whoever could find its upper or lower end was the greater. Vishnu took the form of a boar and burrowed down into the earth to find the base, while Brahma took the form of a swan and soared upwards to seek its summit. Vishnu failed to reach the base of the column, but beginning to see within himself the supreme light which dwells in the hearts of all, he became lost in meditation, oblivious to the physical body and even unaware of himself, the one who sought. Brahma saw the flower of a mountain tree falling through the air, thinking to win by deception, returned with it and declared that he had plucked it from the summit. Vishnu admitted his failure and returned to Lord Shiva in praise and prayer, saying, "You are the self-knowledge. You are Om. You are the beginning, middle, and end of everything. You are everything and illuminate everything." He was pronounced great, while Brahma was abashed and confessed his fault. In this legend, Vishnu represents the ego or individuality, and Brahma the mentality, while Shiva is Atma, the spirit or self. The story continues that because of the lingam or column of light was too dazzling to behold, Shiva manifested himself instead as the hill Arunachala, declaring, "As the moon derives its light from the sun, so other holy places shall derive their sanctity from Arunachala. This is the only place where I have taken this form for the benefit of those who wish to worship me and obtain illumination. Arunachala is Om itself. I will appear on the summit of this hill every year at Kartikai in the form of a peace-giving beacon." This refers not only to the sanctity of Arunachala itself, but also to the preeminence of the doctrine of Advaita and the path of self-inquiry, of which Arunachala is the center. One can understand this meaning in Sri Bhagavan saying, "In the end, everyone must come to Arunachala." It was more than 2 years after his arrival at Tiruvannamalai before Sri Bhagavan began to live on the hill. Up till then, he had stayed constantly at some shrine or temple. Only towards the close of 1898 did he take up his abode in the small temple, hallowed centuries ago by the presence of the great saint Gautama Rishi, where his mother found him. He never left Arunachala again. Early the next year, he moved into a cave on the hill itself, and thereafter he stayed in one cave or another until 1922, when he moved down to the foot of the hill. There the present Ramana ashram grew, and there he spent his remaining years on earth. While on the hill, he lived nearly all the time on the southern slope. The ashram also stands at the south, just beside the Dakshinamurti Mantapam, the stone hall. The southward facing is one of the 108 names of Bhagavan that are now chanted daily at his tomb. It is a name symbolic of spiritual authority in general, as the Sadguru is the pole round which the world revolves, but it is in particular a name of Dakshinamurti. And Dakshinamurti is Shiva teaching in silence. In the verse quoted at the beginning of the chapter, Sri Bhagavan identifies Arunachala with Dakshinamurti. And in the following verse, he speaks of Ramana and Arunachala as one. In the recesses of the lotus-shaped heart of all, from Vishnu downwards, there shines as absolute pure consciousness the Param Atman, the Supreme Self or Spirit, who is the same as Arunachala or Ramana. When the mind melts with love of Him and reaches the inmost recess of the heart, wherein He abides as the Beloved, the subtle eye of absolute consciousness opens, and He reveals Himself as pure knowledge.